what percentage would you say the vows would consist of Garth Brooks' monologue of slick stuff, real stuff,
Slick
neat stuff,
neat stuff, raw stuff. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the raw stuff.
I mean, about 100%. I don't know why you would have to write vows that weren't entirely composed of things Garth Brooks has recorded or said on the internet. You know, whenever I go to weddings now, I'm always just like, boy. Cliche. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Recording now.
Yeah, baby.
What?
Word.
How's it going?
You had something to say to me? You got something to say?
Yeah, I got a couple of things to say, actually. So, me and you talked off mic about, I expressed how I thought that I maybe wasn't at my best for the Constantine podcast. You know, but it's okay. But I just want to reiterate that I was really exhausted that day. And today, to reiterate how much I love doing this, I will do my Samantha impression on mic for everybody.
Oh,
But Carrie, I just want to get my pussy ate.
please.
I'm sorry to my mothers and my father that they had to hear that. Today we're talking about Sex and the City, the movie.
Woo-hoo!
Sex and the City 1, bafflingly, the first film in a series.
My God. And of course, the best one. The best one of all the other ones to follow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sex and the City 2 feels like a fever dream. So
I feel like it's reductive to call Sex and the Cityverse a movie. This thing is an event. It is a phenom.
Which one?
Just HBO, right? Sex and the City, the show. It's a timestamp in pop culture.
Hold on though. So Sex and the City 1, the film that we're talking about today, released in 2008, written, directed by Michael. What's his name? Michael something King. Michael Patrick King.
There you go.
Yeah. You know, the creator or whatever the show.
Yeah.
This movie is barely a movie. It's more like 3 episodes of the show smashed together.
That's exactly
and I have a theory on that. I think it's because if they ever wanted to, but it's HBO, so I'm like, why? Well, I don't know. Do they want to rebroadcast it with commercials, or I don't know? Because it seems so like cleanly separated into 3 parts.
Yeah.
Which is why it's 2.5 hours long, which is crazy.
This movie has no business being this long.
Sex and the City 2 is an event. Not a good one, but it is an event.
That's a car crash.
Yeah.
That is
It's a car
accident.
crash on the dangerous highways of the Middle East.
I'm sorry, but Sex and the City 2 is just a homemade abortion. Like, it's not good. Sorry. It's awful.
It's illegal in half the states.
As well
union.
it should be.
And I guarantee and promise to everyone, we will never talk about Sex and the City 2, ever.
Never.
But we will talk about Sex and the City 1.
At great length.
Also, content warning, this is going to be an X-rated show because we're not going to be talking much about the city, okay? We're going to be talking about the sex. Not much city involved.
What about Manhattan? Oh, God. Right.
Okay.
We'll get into it.
So you pushed me in the direction of watching this show.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I don't regret it. I actually quite like Sex and the City.
Baby.
I think it's a pretty damn good show. This movie is a really bad representation of the show.
100%. Thank you for saying that. I feel just like I've redeemed myself because every time I bring it up in social circles, it's like, who are you? Who even talks about sex? Sex and the City is a great show.
And you bring it up a lot. Like, you bring it up in an amount that I'm like, it's inappropriate that you're talking about this.
I'm just
right now.
I'm team HBO, man. I don't know how
Yeah.
else. I think it's a lot of it is definitely like childhood nostalgia because I watched it way too young.
Were
Like
you
back in India, it was on TV when I was like 11 or something.
Yeah.
Okay, and then already then I was just like, oh my god, we can have television that does this. And then
Yeah.
also like being 30 felt like it like eons away. I was like, I'll never get there. And to blink and a half later, here I am.
I actually, yeah. We're the age that Carrie was, or whatever, at the start of the show.
Yeah.
I truly do really think Sex and the City was a really good show.
Yeah.
It had really bad parts to it and
True.
really ridiculous. Like, I read a couple like kind of retrospective reviews in the wake of Sex and the City 2, which was a disaster, and then also in the wake of the new miniseries that came out, which was whatever apparently.
And
but like
just like death.
Lots of people pointed out the show had issues. Like it wasn't perfect, but honestly, like I watched it, I pretty much binged it and pretty much enjoyed the whole thing.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about it.
Yes.
There's a lot that's like ridiculous and fun to laugh at.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that's sincerely very good. And like ultimately, if you're a doubter of how good that show was, I really recommend just like trying it out. It's a really good show. And it's more entertaining than a lot of shit that's on television
Definitely.
right fucking now.
Sex
which
and the
is
City,
ridiculous.
I totally agree. If I feel like it gave birth, or at least like paved the way for just the world having groups of 4 women. I feel like Sex and the City owned the idea of like 4 women hanging out. So like we have Sex Lives of College Girls now, which is
fucking show rules.
Excellent show. Good job. And then, we had Girls.
Girls is one of my top
like,
5 favorite shows of all time.
There you go.
Yeah.
So like I feel like even though it was campy and like it had all the comedy of like a dad at the time or like a corny mom, it just hit all the right things. It was very human.
I think the thing that show did so well that's missing from a lot of television. I think you and me talked about it, that I always find something that annoys me about modern television is like there's like shows about dragons and incest and a $1 billion Lord of the Rings show, but the best shows on television are about teenagers doing drugs, fucking people in London making sick trades on the fucking market
industry,
and these girls fucking at a college. Like it's you would think that the marquee big budget shows are exciting, and they're just not.
No.
But the thing that makes Sex and the City so good, and the thing that honestly makes those 3 shows I just mentioned, which are Euphoria, Industry, and Sex Lives of College Girls, so good, is like the core cast and members of this like gang are just so people you want to be around.
Yeah.
And like they have so much more character and chemistry, even from the start of Sex and the City, where it was doing all these weird things like breaking the fourth wall and being very episodic. You still like Carrie is a ridiculous person in lots of ways, which we'll get to, which this movie does her a disservice to. But ultimately, like Carrie is like, oh, I kind of have known people a little like her, and I would get along with her in real life probably, even despite her ridiculousness. I think she could be like an acquaintance of mine, maybe not like a fucking best friend, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
And
relatable.
Yeah. I mean, that's the simple word for it. Yeah.
And it's funny you say that, because even though the show is called Sex and the City, and a lot of it has to do with, oh my God, talking about taboo things or doing things that are not, like
putting raw sushi on your body and just waiting for a weird looking man to come eat it off of you.
There you go. A normal Tuesday. Like 3 out of the 4 characters are pretty conformist though. They still believe in like traditional ideas of love and marriage, right? Wouldn't you say? Like Miranda, Carrie, and Charlotte, as basic as they come for most part. Samantha is the only one who's like a little bit of someone who's out there, kind of bringing them into this whole idea of like, here's what an empowered woman looks like. She just, do your impression. She does what?
She just wants to get her pussy ate.
There you go.
Yeah. Carrie, but I just want to get my pussy ate. I don't know how I can go anywhere without getting my pussy ate. I'm gonna cut that. Well, I disagree actually, because I was reading like a couple retrospective reviews, one in the Guardian and one in Harper's, and something that the author in the Guardian brought up, which she was very not happy with the direction of both the films, and this was in preview to the new Sex and the City film, which she was essentially like, this is like a war crime, and and she was saying that like, and this is the issue with this film, and we can get to it, is that like Charlotte actually is the most basic, straightforward kind of glitter-eyed girly girl who wants to get married, whereas the other three, they don't settle for stuff until ultimately the ending, which kind of sucks, where Carrie settles for big. I would say definitely, but they're performed with no stigma towards their situation. Samantha sleeps around. Miranda is kind of like a high-powered, intelligent, no matter what you think of how annoying she can be, a high-powered, intelligent person with a high-powered job who goes through lots of relationships before she ultimately settles on Steve.
Yeah.
And then Carrie is someone who writes 100 words a week and somehow affords her apartment. The movie, the issue is it does kind of undercut their independence. They're sort of, for lack of a better term, they're sort of feminism.
Yeah,
in the way that like the show doesn't judge them for wanting to be non-traditionalist.
No,
this movie kind of is like, yeah, but they all got to fit in there eventually, and it's like,
there you
fuck
go.
off! Like that's so frustrating.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, even though the show did a great job of like setting them up that way, the movie just made 3 out of 4 women kind of basic. Okay, Charlotte has always been very traditional. Charlotte's a Republican. Okay, we can say it.
I mean, Charlotte is, yeah.
Yeah, Charlotte's hanging out with Ivanka Trump at parties. Like, how sick would it have
Charlotte
been?
today is married to a certain Supreme Court
Kushner?
justice who pretends his wife doesn't make any money, and she's
There
all
you
like,
go.
yeah, but you know what? The election wasn't real. And he's just like, I just make court decisions and talk to a Nazi collaborator.
Yeah. And she's
Not a
like,
collaborator,
"But the
excuse me, a
tulips."
memorabilia collector.
Oh, jeez.
Sorry.
Oh, ew.
Yeah. But that Charlotte is like, yeah.
Yeah.
She is just like the most straight down the line white basic
Yep.
lady. And to be honest, like in the movie, this is what I thought, and I think I kind of forgot about in this film. Her and Samantha are just like turned into like caricatures a little bit
Yeah, dude.
of who they were, and Charlotte is so fucking annoying in the show, but in a way that you're just like, look, if that's all the shit you care about, great. You're probably not going to be my friend,
Yeah.
but that's fine. I don't like you. I find you really annoying,
Yeah.
but it's okay. But in this movie, it's kind of like her and Samantha they're just too out there.
Yeah.
At least Carrie and Miranda kind of maintain some normalcy. And I actually think in this film, Miranda is like, Cynthia Nixon is doing a really good job.
Hell yeah.
And because she, I think,
agree.
has a more complex kind of story to tell, whereas Carrie's is so boring in this. Like, and Sarah Jessica Parker, I think, is a really good actress, but she's just kind of like, what, $10 million? Yeah, okay, whatever. I will shit in a bowl if you want me to, you know. And yeah.
I feel like Charlotte's character is just a conduit for the audience, where it's just, she just appears when you need a reaction from her, but I don't think she has more than 2 lines of dialogue in this thing. You know, like later in the plot, like, oh my God, you're getting married, or oh my God, you left him. You know, every single scene is just her having an outrageous reaction, where like the audience is supposed to feel that way.
It's like
And so
her and
she
Evan
just-
Handler were just told, like, hey, tone it the fuck down.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
It's like they showed up on the day, and the director was kind of like, yeah, so you had 4 or 5 scenes, we cut them all, so just, you know, make big eyes, and yeah, like it is really not. They don't have a lot. So Charlotte gets pregnant. That's her story in this film.
Yeah.
After not being able to get pregnant before with Evan Handler.
Yeah.
And having adopted a young Chinese baby. A young Chinese
infant baby.
Babies are often really young, so it's a good thing that they got the young one.
The baby looks just like her husband too. It's great.
Chinese Evan Handler.
Tall baby and small baby. It's
Yeah.
perfect.
But it is like, like Evan Handler especially, who I really like as an actor, as a just generally a performer, I think is a really good actor.
He's so good.
Yeah, but he's in the background of so many scenes, and you're just like, man, sorry, dude.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he was really good in the show, but just like, yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, we don't need him. This show is about the 4 girls and then two guys, kind of.
Kind of another issue with the film is that they're trying to give a story to each one of the women, and there's no space for it. There's just even in a 2.5 hour movie, it gets undercut, and I think that like the stories they should have gone with were Carrie and Miranda's. You know, Samantha's is very contrived. I thought,
Yeah, Samantha's is a little bit maybe can be reduced to 12 minutes altogether. And
also
then have a resolution.
Yeah, and also it doesn't really start until about halfway through the film. When like she expresses her issues with Smith Jerrod early on, but then the issues don't really arise until the infamous sushi scene, which is just eye poison.
Everybody stop what you're doing. Go watch Sex and the City sushi scene only.
Yeah. Yeah.
So stupid. I love it.
And so I mean, suffice to say, the show was great. This movie is not a great representation of the show. Yeah. It boils the themes of the show down to its most basic parts and strips away all of the nuance that the show had.
Yeah.
And
it's bad.
If you're like a huge fan, which like I'm not like super indebted. I can pretend that these just don't exist until we decide to do this podcast for some reason. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. I feel like the show is totally different. It doesn't even touch like emotionally what the movie is now trying to. It's not. The movie's not good.
The show just builds such a great foundation all the time with the different directions that the characters go in. Like it's just a character comedy drama, right? And they do a really good job of that. They always have. And I'm definitely guilty of, and I think lots of people are guilty of, like, you know, dismissing the show as kind of lighter fare than it actually is.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like, it's one of the most influential shows ever. Do
you know why?
Because it's good.
No, it's because of the patriarchy, bruh. It's because of misogyny, bruh.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
Like lots. I think there is probably a large contingency of men who just dismiss it as like, no, that's the ladies' show. You know, that's the women's fare. That's what they do.
The movie kind of proved them right, because the movie did end up being a little bit of that's just a ladies' movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like if you're a person who goes into, and this reviewer in The Guardian that I read, she mentions that about the reviewer for The New Yorker, Anthony Lane, who just professed to have not watched the show, and then goes into this movie and it's just like, what the fuck did I just see? And it's frustrating because, like, if you're a fan of the show, you don't have to defend this film.
Totally.
But you kind of want to be like, I don't want you. This shouldn't be your first introduction to this, because the film just isn't very fucking good.
No, you know the girls from the show in a completely different capacity, and then the movie rolls around and it's like, what are these walking bags? It's just not.
You know what it's akin to? It's akin to going to see a band and they're like aged and they just play their hits, but you can tell they just hate playing the hits.
Yeah, they're tired now.
And like, and you're just kind of like, oh, this would be nicer if there was some fucking feeling in it. But
yeah, good.
Instead,
good point.
This movie, because of that, it comes across as just this like capitalist commercialist hellscape of
100%
shit. You know?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, the movie does start with a fucking Fergie song about labels and love.
Yeah.
So, of course, 90% of this film is supported by materialism, buying love with money and all of that shit. And that's fine. If that's the kind of movie that the creators wanted to make, that's fine. It's just they completely stripped all the characters of their emotional backstory. Samantha, reduced to a just stick with tits. Like, I don't know what.
Yeah, like a woman who like survived cancer not that far in the past of the show, right? Yeah.
And they touch on it for like 2 seconds.
And like, so there's a couple other big problems that were problems in the show and they're problems in the film. First one, Smith Jerrod is just a terrible character. And he's such a weird looking man. He's meant
to be.
I don't know.
I think he's meant to be Brad Pitt.
He good could
because
try.
she's like the, like the publicist who, it's like, all right, I'm gonna get this guy, I'm gonna give him the fame, he's gonna be everywhere. Smith Jarrett's face is on billboards, it's on book covers, it's like at the bus station, it's everywhere.
I know, but the show really had to convince you that this guy is like really hot. And honestly, for the people attracted to, male specimens out there, is this guy legitimately that hot? Because I think he is weird looking.
It's true of all Australians, babe.
But
I don't know
his whole story, every fucking scene with Smith Jarrett is basically him coming through a door and just being like, I'm home.
Yep.
And then Samantha having a problem.
Yep.
And he's a bad character, and the actor doesn't really get much of a performance to go on. But it's just kind of like, whatever. Like, it just seems like on rails and really boring.
I think he's meant to be nice guy only, period.
He's meant to be, what he's meant to be is that he's meant to any other woman besides Samantha.
Yeah.
He is basically a dreamboat.
Right.
But because Samantha is who she is, she has to contend with what's truly in her heart, which is going around getting strange dick.
Yep.
And being, the person she is, which I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. That's who Samantha is. She wants, and it's a shame that like the story ends up that they don't like, it's a little monogamy centric where it's just kind of like, you guys can't work out like another thing.
Of
like,
course. Great point. Why didn't they just talk about open relationships?
Yeah. And that's kind of an issue with, there's some things in the show that haven't aged very well. Like there was some stuff that it was just kind of like watching it now when in the 2020s, you're just kind of like, I mean, this would have been so different back.
Right.
But like this, even in this movie, you're just kind of like, I mean, why couldn't they just work out something, man? Like the guy's always working.
She's out here making sushi. Like she got a lot of free time. She's out here
stumbling across her showering neighbor and his huge hog. Like
this fucking Antonio Banderas dupe.
This guy showers in the most insane way.
Like a Walmart Zorro.
Like, why don't you join me?
But sir, put your dick away. I'm just trying to shake your hand. Get away from me.
Yeah. Anyway, like it is a little like lacking on that regard, but it also just makes Samantha's story just kind of boring.
Yeah.
Now let's get into the plot, because the other big problem, and I'm gonna just label it here, but it's inherent to the beginning of the plot. Big sucks so bad.
Big is not even in this movie. He's so far away. His eyes are glazed over in every scene.
It's insane to have spent like 8 seasons with this fucking guy.
Dude.
And being like, at the end, you're just like, she chose him. I mean, I get that fucking the Russian guy was like not that interesting.
Yo.
But like, okay, another thing I read too was like the idea that Carrie had Aiden, right? And Aiden was just like a fucking dreamboat. Legit, like a decent guy.
Right.
And a good guy, really hot. He fucking made wood. He laid the wood on her, I'm sure.
He cheated on her?
No, she just like couldn't bring herself to settle down.
Right.
And then in the end, she settles with the worst fucking man in Manhattan. Like just the most dull, just worst, whitest, waspiest piece of shit. yeah, dude. But that's kind of a shame about that ending. That's how the show ended, and then that's how this movie ends. So I'm not gonna go too detailed on the plot, but like
I think everybody's deeply aware of Sex and the City, plot by plot.
Especially this film. This film was really influential because like Carrie and Big are trying to buy a new insane apartment, and Carrie's like, well, I could contribute $20 a month, and Big is like, well, that's okay. I spent $6 million.
Speaking of, when they come in to look for the apartment together, she looks at him and goes, "Can we afford this?" We?
Yeah.
Sure, you put down $20.
Can you afford it? Can you pay the cab fare it took you to get here? Like, Jesus Christ.
Oh, the loudest scoff I'd ever experienced in my life.
This is one of those shows that has one of those, some of the most ridiculous real estate pipe dreams in the fucking world, and I'll get to one later. But, like, so, and the other thing, too, which I find, I mean, not to speak on behalf of, like, straight women everywhere, but the whole conceit of Carrie being like, this closet's not big enough, and Big's like, I will build you a large one. And when Big says that, I was like, are you you personally going to do that? Because you don't seem like a person who has skills or talents in any regard whatsoever.
No, he's
we
a
don't even know what your
finance bro.
job is.
He's a finance hedge
But
fund dude, bro.
That's the thing. I was like, just admit that you're like, I could make a phone call and get someone to build this for me.
Yeah.
And then at the
That's
end,
implied, no?
at the end, he builds the closet and Carrie's like, "Oh, I love you." And it's so insulting.
I don't know what you're talking about. I would like a closet that is the size of Vancouver Island. Their apartment is fucking ridiculous. Also,
Yeah.
is it the same apartment from Taken? Now that I think about it, is it where they get tookened? Is the takening?
I've never seen Taken, but don't they get taken in Thailand or something?
No, before they get taken, the girls in an apartment.
You're still talking to me
celebrating
like I've seen this movie.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to lay it
before,
out.
and I haven't seen it, babe. Yeah.
I find it hard to believe that is.
It's this one I missed. Yeah,
Nice.
I've seen Sex and the City the movie 3 times. But I
Well,
haven't
Sex
seen
and the City
Taken.
3 Sex 3 Taken. we'll get into it.
Okay, so the other thing about Big too, the guy's got like no friends. He's got no hobbies. What is he outside of this? Like he's
a ghost.
Yeah, like he's kind of just a bad character because he just exists in relation to Carrie.
Yep.
And that just is
That dude's a prop.
fucking lame. He's kind of the equivalent of Will Smith's wife, Regina King, in Enemy of the State.
Yeah,
How we
yeah.
commented on that.
Yep.
It's not dissimilar to. It's this kind of like,
Great point.
yeah, like, but he still has no sense of character because
No.
they built up this mystery of him for so long, and then they spew it all out, and you realize you're just like, oh, you're just fucking boring. It's like, do you even like movies or something? Like, what do you?
No,
You know?
dude, he's like 700 years old. He
know.
reads poetry books. Okay, man's got
Barely.
loads of time.
He barely reads poetry books, dude.
I mean,
And-
I don't see Rupi Kaur on his shelf, so I don't think he has enough culture.
Oh, we can't get into Ruby. can't get into that. Yeah.
I cried. He crowed.
Let-
we both crew.
Let's just say Charlotte would be a big Ruby Kaur fan. And then so Miranda and Steve, they're taking care of their kid. They're not having sex, and then again, this just like moves the plot along. But Steve is just kind of like, oh, we're not having sex anyway. I cheated on you, and it's like,
Which that would never happen.
it's also so like it just fucking happens right away.
Yeah.
And he's just like, Miranda, I cheated on you. And the problem with Steve's accent and my impression of him is he slowly loses the accent over the course of the show, and by the time he's in this, he's no longer in the
Jersey guy?
Miranda stage. Like he's so annoying.
I waited however long we've been recording for you to drop
I knew
Just,
that.
I'm so happy right now. Can you get it one more time?
Miranda?
I love it so much.
So
Yeah, which is unbelievable because TV show Steve would never. He's a big old sweetie pie. So much so that he went after someone who's just this tall, power, beast of a woman like Miranda, where he's drawn to that.
it's just another like prop plot. Kind of.
Totally.
It just doesn't really make sense. And anyway, so that's their issue. And then Carrie and Big decide to get married. It's very unromantic. And then we are forced to watch a couple scenes with Anthony Marantino, literally Satan. I have to bring this up. He is literally the devil.
Yes, I agree.
In my opinion. And then what's Carrie's best friend's name? The other Stanley doesn't say anything in this film.
No.
Doesn't get a fucking line in, which is insane.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. That
Yeah.
actor passed away like last year, like 2021, I
Shit.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's really good in the show, and Anthony Marantino is the most annoying character on
Yep.
earth besides Big. And then so Big leaves her at the altar. It's a whole big fucking thing. It's really embarrassing. Obviously, it's awful.
That was such a fantastic scene. When so far in this movie, it's like light and breezy. Even all their conflicts are just like bickering, like and it just trucks along. And then to the point where there's this like crescendo music out of nowhere, because Big leaves her obviously, but their cars cross paths in the streets.
Yeah.
And then they both stop. Carrie gets out of the car and she has like a handful of like bouquet tulips or whatever,
Yeah.
and she beats the shit out of him.
So this is all kind of the first third of the film.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's the only part of the film that really works.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I think it's the only part where I'm just like, this would have been one good episode of television.
And I got goosebumps, dude. Like
Yeah, it's
with
good.
no
It's good.
short of like
Charlotte goes mental on him. It's great. She's
power scene.
yeah,
Just
really good.
the way she yells no at
it was
Big,
very real. Yeah.
so real. And that's what I mean. Like that's what the TV show is. That's what the TV show was. It was very human. It's people doing shitty things like regular people would, and then also, you know, being somewhat broke because not everyone on the show has a $10 million apartment.
Yeah. And then so they head off to take Carrie's honeymoon down in Mexico, the four of them.
Mm-hmm.
Which the only thing I have to say about this will tell you something about this film.
Yeah.
Carrie's very depressed.
Excellent.
Miranda tells her, she's like, you know, one day something will happen and you'll laugh again. You'll feel funny. And the thing she laughs at is Charlotte shitting her pants because she drank Mexico water. That is the level of humor we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Every other joke in the film is Samantha's dog humping something.
Yes.
That's basically where we're at.
So guys, Sex and the City is not a comedy film. All right? It's not. It's a rom drama at best, okay? With like a sliver of calm in there and lots of other.
The calm usually comes from them talking to each other.
Oh, right.
You know,
Also that.
like just their chatter. But just the way, like, like, I'm not a big fan of scatological humor anyway, but I'm just like, that's the funny thing that knocked you out of your terrible stupor of depression was your friend just shitting themselves.
But then even like the scene leading up to that, I was so proud of because you don't expect her to just be like catatonic because the tone completely changes in the film. Where the four of them are sitting in the room and Carrie's just like, will I ever laugh again? Like I feel nothing. I feel dead. That thing drags on for a while.
She's really good in that
and it's
little bit.
Great. And I'm glad they took their time to just like let this bitch sleep for 48 hours. They get to Mexico. There's a really sweet scene where Samantha is this fucking power matriarch classic. Like she comes in, she feeds her. It's a regular like small conversation where she's very sweet.
Yeah,
she winks at her.
That's a really good scene.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's all these like beautiful tender moments, which the show is about camaraderie. Like it is about fucking female friendships.
It's really tender when they are like, hey Miranda, why don't you wax yourself? It's super tender.
It's not. I'm not. You know what?
I know. I'm just.
I'm not even convinced it's a gender thing at this point. Like I feel like that intimacy and like kindness just comes a little bit more naturally to women.
It's like, but that's what it was so successful with the show, and that's the best parts of this film is it's about friendship, right? It's about fucking. It's about the joys in friendship, and it's also about the difficulties in friendship, but it's also about like someone like Samantha, who in reality, it's like if you met someone like that, you don't have to hear about all of her just getting dicked down all the time, and you can just be like, I mean, she's probably a very nice, bubbly, out there person.
She's the best one in the crowd, anyway.
Like, also she's like incredibly loyal and cares about her friends. You know, yeah. I don't know.
Those
parts are really nice.
Those parts are
There's
great.
a part later that the one part I noted that works later is like the New Year's scene, the New Year's sequence where Carrie's alone and Miranda's alone, and then she goes and like walks to her place, or like that stuff is really kind of touching and sweet.
That was one of my favorite things where they're just, it's like a little tiny little montage where they are in each other's lives.
Those are things like that work in a television show that you don't really see in movies. So I don't know. It was nice. So anyway, do you want to talk more about Mexico? Because we can move this along.
I would love to hear about how she shits. I'm just kidding. No, stop. Let's move it. Yeah.
So Carrie comes home and she hires an assistant, and somehow she can pay an assistant to do. The assistant literally just sorts her emails. Carrie's inability to use technology is really insane, and it explains a lot why she only can fucking like type 300 words a week. But
OG Twitterati, man.
She wouldn't even use Twitter though. She wouldn't understand how to use it.
She would do it on papers, fax it to Twitter office.
And she would just hand it to Jennifer Hudson and be like, "Here you go." And Jennifer Hudson would be like, "Man, I won an Academy Award last year, and this is what I'm doing."
Can I just say, fucking musical prodigy Jennifer Hudson, and then the movie opens with Fergie instead. No disrespect, I fucking love Fergie,
but Jennifer Hudson is
ends
the end.
movie.
Yeah,
Sure.
Can I just say something? So Jennifer Hudson wins supporting actress for the film Dreamgirls.
Mm-hmm.
Dreamgirls doesn't exist anymore. It's like I don't think anyone has ever seen that film ever. No. Like even when it was when like she won that award, which is like amazing and stuff. I'm just kind of like, was that real, or was that like just made in the collective fantasy? Is
Berenstein
that the Berenstein
Dreamgirls.
Bears? Yeah, like, and even I mean, we're ones to talk. We talk about the most insane, ridiculous movies that no one's ever seen. But even like, have you ever? I don't think anyone's ever been like, oh, yeah, I should rewatch Dreamgirls sometime. Like, no, it's so weird. Anyway, Jennifer Hudson wins an Academy Award, and then she comes to work on this, and then she's
get that money, girl. Like, that's what's up.
She's basically like Jennifer racial representation Hudson in this movie.
Oh, dude, it's so blatant.
It is. It's. There's nothing wrong with like representation matters. It does, but Sex and the City was long accused of being incredibly white, which it was, which is a problem. Yeah, but this kind of like just being like, well, here's one. It's like so it's just insulting, and it's cynical. It feels very cynical.
Yeah,
to me. And then
it's also like just this child who's half her age who comes in as quote unquote black savior, basically, till the end of the film, where
Carrie, she like helps her believe in love again. She's not unlike the magical black man trope.
That's what I'm saying.
Of Sex and the City. Yeah, and that's like, and then what does she get for it? She gets the most hideous Louis Vuitton bag I've ever fucking seen. That if anyone, like, we're trashing this film, rightly so. Yeah. But if anything of this movie epitomizes how much I dislike it, it's that scene where she like just has an orgasm over seeing this bag, and she's like, I got my very own Louis Vuitton bag, and it is so over the top.
But it's not even a good bag.
It's so ugly.
It looks like a child made it. You know, I don't know.
Well,
man.
to be fair, a child probably did make it.
Hey. I bet the child got paid real good. We don't know shit about fashion, all right? Like about this type of fashion. I agree. I wear blue jeans 7 days a week. But that purse, man, if we take a second to just go look at that photo, tell me that purse will not haunt your dreams. That purse is dress, Lady Gaga meat dress equivalent.
It's like it's an assault on the eyes.
What the fuck?
But also just like that 3 seconds where Jennifer Hudson shrieks, it is like the epitome of like the consumerist disgustingness of the movie itself, basically.
But then that they don't, take that away from they don't even hide the fact that that's what the movie is about, which I appreciate, because straight away, first line of the film, labels.
Yeah.
All throughout the films, labels. And her whole wedding outfit, labels.
To be fair to the focus on fashion in this film, this film is over the top, and we always like joke. I mean, we joke about it with Emily in Paris, which has a similar conceit where you're just like, wow, every scene, what the fuck is this woman wearing? But if you're into that sort of thing, fine. That's totally fine. And at the time when Sex and the City, the show, was on, and when the movie came out and stuff, that kind of, as little as I know about fashion, like that kind of fashion was more of a thing. Today, people wear more like normcore, blue jeans, sweatshirts, whatever, right?
Right.
Fashion has definitely changed. But for a certain audience segment, that is the shit they want to see. Like that's
totally.
There is, and
I'm happy it exists. It's like cool art that you just wear.
The costumer of this movie, like they put a ton of thought into it. Yeah. And yes, you can criticize the film for being like, these women are essentially clothes horses adorned with just like ads for ridiculously overpriced clothing that's honestly kind of ugly.
Yeah.
But if you're into that sort of thing, that is totally fine.
Hell yeah.
It's kind of comes with the price of admission with this film, that you just have to be like, okay, let's talk about Vivienne Westwood and get it out of the way. Like, I don't, John, personally, I don't care, and I don't think you care, but some people do. That's totally fine.
Totally. There was some like what's her name? Candace
Bergen.
Bergen
Yeah.
makes a reference that I don't even fucking get, but something about subtext. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't remember. She has one scene in the movie. And,
There's
and
like
I remember,
one line.
I remember watching her being like, I know that woman is really famous. And
Boston Legal, baby.
And if I mess up her name when we record this pod, people will be like, how would you not know? And it's like, I'm not 100. That's why I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, because all the things she says makes me feel like I was born yesterday. I was like, what do you... Because the rest of the movie I'm keeping up with, but then she says something about Diane... Fuck, I'm gonna get this wrong.
Dude,
so
yeah, the whole thing with the
outdated references.
The whole thing with the dress and stuff is just so like the fashion of the dress and the label and like when Carrie's like, oh, I want to wear this vintage dress, and Charlotte is like, oh God, and Anthony Marantino is like, I'm literally the devil.
He just shows up.
And
horns
they like
bigger
dress
than
her in
ever.
this obscene dress. She does a photo shoot for Vogue. It's like it's very fucking. It's
Yeah.
very fashiony.
Love
that stuff
it.
goes way over my head, and I get that that's part of the movie.
Oh,
but
I'm here
whatever.
for it. All
Can-
that shit.
Can I talk about another insane capitalist hellscape part of this film?
What?
When they're in Mexico, before she hires her assistant and before she comes back,
Mhm.
Miranda, the lawyer, doing some fucking pro bono work for her broke ass friend, is like,
Mhm.
yeah, so if you go home, you can get your old apartment back. With like, you just have to pay an extra money. And Carrie's like, darn, I guess that's life. It's like, what do you mean? The extra money must be hundreds of thousands of dollars to get this. Like, and that apartment is so obscene, as everyone who's ever watched the show
Yes.
knows. But she's just like, no, I guess, I don't know. I guess I'll find it in my shoes.
I
like,
guess
what do
I'll
you
write
mean?
like 30 more words this week, and that'll, tide me over.
It'll
for
really,
this down
really
payment.
exhaust me, but I will
Bro.
do it. Yeah.
That's why I'm like, the audacity on this one to be
She's-
like, can we afford this? Bruh.
Yeah.
You can't. No.
Anyway, so that whole thing with her, like, she's just like easily like moves back into her old apartment in the most competitive real estate rental market in the world.
Yeah.
And she leaves her shoes at the fucking rich apartment that her and Big own. This is a thing that comes up later.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, Charlotte gets pregnant. I don't give a fuck. Charlotte gets pregnant and gives birth. I don't care about this story at all. It's very boring, but it works in the plot because she this is how she
Big.
gets Big and Carrie back in the room together. Whatever. Who
Right.
cares? Charlotte's whole thing in this movie is so like saccharine and
Nobody. I
over
don't
the
think
top,
there's
yeah.
any, like, even devout fans of Sex and the City give two shits about Charlotte. I think everybody watches the show to see their dynamic as a group together, but individually, no one would care about Charlotte's
When you only
character.
have to spend such little time with her in this film,
Exactly.
you stop caring. But when you have to spend like 40 minutes a week with her, like you did in the actual show, you're just kind of like, boy.
But
It's kind of
fast
like
forward.
what's her name in Girls?
Lena.
No. no.
the
Her
one, the main
the
one.
one she lives with. Oh God, what's her
Kimber, Kenza,
Kim
tall girl, Get Out face.
the one from Get Out, yeah.
Yeah. Whatever. We know what you're talking about.
Allison. I don't fucking know. She looks like an Allison. She's
Allison
not.
Williams.
Allison Williams.
Marnie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Marnie is the worst, as everyone knows.
Yeah.
But
dude.
like, you know, when you spend a bunch of time with her, you definitely like, oh, she is the worst. But really, like, whatever.
Yeah, but it's like, it's an exciting watch. Marnie, you want to see her so you can hate her. Charlotte, you don't want to see her because she's boring.
I mean,
She's so boring.
Girls is just
Fucking
an
excellent show.
amazing show.
Hell
Like
yeah.
the thing that Girls kind of iterated on off Sex and the City that I really like is like, you know, I could see myself like being acquaintances with someone like Carrie or Samantha and being like, I mean, these are nice people. You know, if you were also a 300-word writer at some stupid magazine and you're like, my coworker Carrie, yeah, she's really nice. She writes about cities, sex, other
Yeah,
stuff.
both
She has
of
she
them.
always has different shoes on. You know, and she always knows where to go for brunch. Like I'm always like, hey Carrie, I'm going out this Sunday for brunch. Where should I go? And she's got a fucking place. So
Yeah.
that's her thing. But in Girls, you're just kind of like, man, I want to keep watching them, and I hate all of them, and I don't want to be around any of them. I'm glad that I'm not around them. You know?
Dude,
Yeah.
I know.
That show is amazing. If anyone
Fucking-
has any also like preconceived notions about Girls, don't. That
Preconceived.
show is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think after we binged that shit, for a week straight, every time I had to hail a cab, I did like the Carrie run. Where you walk a couple steps, jog a couple steps, and then walk
Hell
a couple
yeah.
steps. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
me out here in the streets in the rain, pitter patter.
Yeah.
Taxi.
With your-
Nobody stopped.
With your angel wings, you're always wearing angel wings. Yeah.
Angel. Oh my
Oh, wait,
God,
no.
the angel.
Is she
wing.
wearing? She's wearing a tutu.
Yeah, it's a tutu. It's
Yeah.
a pink tutu. Yeah.
Incredible.
Which I love because the movie also opens with her wearing this like outrageous like
Yeah, I have a
floral
picture of it
dress.
on my phone. She has like an insane like big flower on her.
yeah. I mean, if she fucking rocks it. She
Yeah.
makes it look good.
Yeah, she wears something absolutely insane when she wears an outfit when her and Miranda are shopping in some store at like Halloween.
Yeah.
She wears an outfit that is like, it had my eyes bleeding. It was so hideous. But
Did you
whatever.
notice there was a scene where she had like an Eiffel Tower bag?
Yeah.
Why would you?
I
I did.
didn't
I wrote
notice,
it down.
no.
There's but for all of that, Burnett Carey though, what's up?
Smoke show. Absolutely.
Burnett Carey can get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's up, SJP? Smashed it again.
Yeah. She's really good. I overall, I think Sarah Jessica Parker in the show was phenomenal. She was the Tony Soprano holding the fucking thing together, man. She is so good. Yeah.
You know what I'm fucking saying?
Yeah.
These men. These men
anyway.
don't understand.
Oh, so another plot point. Miranda like said something offhand to Big, which caused him to doubt the whole wedding. That's why it's off. Anyway, Samantha. Let's go into Samantha's story. So she's got a problem with Smith Jarrett. She doesn't want to be tied down to a man. She keeps seeing her neighbor fucking some hottie, and she wants to get in on that action. She wears a hat the size of a duvet on her head, which is just crazy. And
Cause sun is out.
yeah, sun be out. And then she just breaks up with Smith Jarrett. She to own it. She
Yeah.
just owns it, and that's
Yeah.
fine. That's,
But also, can I
Samantha's
say the
story.
breakup scene was markedly different from the TV show where, do you remember Richard, this guy she breaks up with?
Nope.
And it's he's closer to her age. I think there probably some cheating. They also have terms about being in an open relationship.
Yeah,
And then ultimately,
I kind of remember Richard now, but I
Yeah,
can't
like,
picture his face.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter. He
White?
he also gives her hella. He also gives her a ring, which she, just rips it apart and throws it back at him. She's like, I don't want any of this shit. I don't want any memory of you. And then cut to Samantha on the show, so much more tender, already
Yeah.
more mature and grown.
She's very mature.
She's very mature, even though she wanted to do certain things for herself, like buy this, ridiculous ring that is inflated to 10 times the cost.
Yeah, the auction.
The auction. She
Yeah.
wanted to buy it for herself for 10 grand. He ends up buying it for her for 50 or something like that. And then the fact that he's like, no, just keep the ring, and then it'll remind you of me. And she does. So she's not
Yeah.
completely foregoing this experience for herself. It's just that she prioritizes some things over others.
We don't need too much like high drama, I think, in the
No.
film, really. Like there's so much at the beginning. And sorry that we're like hopping around back and forth in the plot, guys. There's no plot. It just
What do you
moves
mean?
along. It's really not that difficult.
It's it's 3 plots.
Yeah, and so Miranda and Carrie go out on Valentine's Day. Miranda confesses about what she said to Big, and Carrie gets angry at her, and then also says like, you shouldn't have broken up with Steve over this cheating thing.
Yeah.
And
So because Miranda says to her that I told Big that he was crazy to get married.
yeah.
And that's what causes a rift.
Yeah, and everyone actually kind of secretly thinks Miranda's being unfair to Steve.
Yeah.
But Carrie they've been keeping it a secret basically, and then Carrie finally confesses.
Which, can I say, is the most outrageous fucking reaction, because Miranda's marriage is fucking nearly over. And
She's
Charlotte,
a kid. She's a kid too.
Charlotte's reaction to that is, really? Steve? I can't believe it. Steve? But when Carrie is like, yeah, he just didn't show up, I guess we're going to break up. Charlotte has, I don't know, she like shits her pants, I guess. She has the most outrageous reaction to like an event that never happened.
Yeah.
Compared to Miranda, who's been married with a child, and then she just has like the smallest reaction. It's like, what? Like, does she not give a shit?
They do. They
inflate relationship
the
over
wedding was
another.
so over the top, right? That was
Yeah.
the thing, and I feel for Carrie because it would have been it's so humiliating. That's what she says. That's why she
Totally.
smashes him with the flowers.
Yeah.
But with Miranda's thing, I do feel like it's like being cheated on would suck real bad, And they're kind of like, oh, I'm sorry that happened, but like, aren't you being too harsh? And it's like they don't really let her kind of stew in her feelings
No.
of being cheated on.
They immediately like
They
fucking wrap it up, bro.
like, are kind of like, what's your problem? You know, whereas like, and the thing is,
man's
too,
gotta eat.
the thing is, we sound very catty right now. We sound like we're watching Love Is Blind together. Yeah. But the thing is too is that like Charlotte, if like she had been cheated on, it's not like she would have been like, oh, maybe I'm being too harsh. She would have just like, no.
She would have cut his
Charlotte
throat.
barely fucks anyway, so like who knows? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god.
So Charlotte encounters Big. They have an argument and her water breaks, and then Charlotte gives birth, and Big waits, hoping to see Carrie in the waiting room. And when Carrie goes to see the baby, Evan Handler gets his final fucking scene in the sun.
Oh,
which
he's so cool.
He's very good in, yeah.
He's so good in it.
And he's just like, look, the guy, I told him that, like, he looked like he was waiting for you, so, like, maybe call him,
Yeah.
you know? And then she finds, because she can't use her computer, she finds her emails, the emails that he sent that Jennifer Hudson
Locked away in a separate folder.
which are all him just typing out poems from old. He's the worst. And then she, I can't even finish that.
Finish your sentence.
He wrote all these
love poems.
It's hard to explain. He sent her emails with all these love poems, and then he sent an email himself being like, "Hey, I miss you. Hey, take me back." That's my impression of
I'm big on
I do a great
stuff.
Samantha, and I do a great Big. So
There you go. There is a very tender moment very early on when they're still together and they're in bed and they're talking about poetry and shit, and they read one of the poems, which is Beethoven. Sure.
I don't think Beethoven was a poet, babe.
I don't know. He could fucking string two words together.
These are two people who, like, in modern day would have like reading in their dating profile, but then once they got to know each other, they'd be like, oh, thank God I don't have to pretend I read.
Do you remember the time when people used to have the word sapiosexual on their profiles?
I think that still exists.
Fuck.
And that is a really interesting, yeah.
That's a big word. Mr. Big word.
Yeah, but he is not.
No.
He is not
No.
that.
No. He's just
No matter what you think of that term, he's not one of those things. He
No.
is not a sapiosexual, nor would he attract a sapiosexual because he is
God, no.
half a brain in his fucking nut. He doesn't-
Boring.
Yeah.
So boring.
The guy, there's a scene where on the New Year's montage, the guy is eating alone at a bar. It's like, you don't have fucking friends?
He looks like he's in in a airport lounge, or like literally in a plane where it's like a side bar and then there's just people hovering over you. It was so sad. It was the saddest scene.
I know, and I actually, even saying that, making fun of him, I feel kind of bad because I'm just like,
Yeah.
why doesn't this guy? But it's like, it's just, the thing is, for all you young folks out there, if you're dating someone and they just don't seem to have friends, you are now their
Don't.
entire social life.
Yeah.
And that is a huge red flag because you don't want it to be that way.
No.
They need to have something outside of their relationship.
Because then you got to talk to them all the time.
Yeah, you got to start a podcast. Ugh, that's the worst. You guys don't know the hell that I'm in.
I'm not crying, you're crying. It's just emotional out here.
Anyway, that's my advice segment. Quit your job and don't date people without friends.
And talk about
Jesus
Sex and the City for
Christ.
3.5 hours.
Yeah.
You know-
and then Carrie heads back to the apartment and he built the closet, and then she's like, oh, I guess I love you now. If I could stick it in me. Yeah.
I am in that fucking closet's bigger than my whole apartment, dude.
I mean,
What else is new?
That whole apartment is bigger than downtown Vancouver, I think. It's so ridiculous, yeah.
That's why they shared it in 2 movies.
Yeah. She probably tucks that $20 bill she's contributing to the mortgage into his pocket, just being like, hey, here's my contribution for this.
Oh, God.
Anyway, buy me a large bed. Yeah. And then the movie ends. There's a sweet scene where they all go out for dinner to celebrate Samantha's 50th birthday.
Yeah.
And then,
They get married.
the girls are all back. Yeah, Big and whatever. Who cares about that?
Hey, wait. Super important question. In your vows, personally, what percentage would you say the vows would consist of Garth Brooks' monologue of slick stuff, real stuff,
Slick
neat stuff?
neat stuff, raw stuff. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the raw stuff.
I mean, about 100%. I don't know why you would have to write vows that weren't entirely composed of things Garth Brooks has recorded or said on the internet. Whenever I go to weddings now, I'm always just like, boy.
Boy.
Cliche.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know why I'm fucking cracking up so hard. I'm just visualizing raw stuff, slick stuff. Okay. This is a bad movie, and I love it so much.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Love is a strong word, but then so are labels.
I've been thinking a lot about the idea of. So you're kind of different than me. At least this is what my experience of being around you is like. I never really dismiss movies forthright out of my mind.
Yeah.
There's lots of movies I don't think of anymore, but so many movies, like maybe a wider range of movies than yourself, I watch where I'm just kind of like, yeah, I mean, I could give that another shot eventually down the road. Like, why not? I don't know. I was just thinking of the idea of like dismissing stuff out of hand, which we talked about, like people probably did with the show, like just kind of like, the effects of the patriarchy kind of being like, oh, that's the lady stuff. And that's, I watch men things like The Shield and NYPD Blue, Law and Order Special Victims
Super
Unit.
hard.
But like, there's stuff to like in this movie. It's not very good. Just like every movie we've done. Like there's a lot to like in some of them. Some of them are great. Some of them are bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I've enjoyed talking about it just now.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of like, does that make it a valuable piece of entertainment? Whereas like you think of like Sex and the City 2, the film, which is just doesn't really add value in any way.
100% not. 100%
to
not. This
the
is
world.
where it should have stopped. Everything after Sex and the City 1 movie has been a fucking dumpster fire. So much so that it is offensive to every kind of person, women, men, trans people, people of color. The show goes and becomes so bad by the time And Just Like That comes out as a show, where now they're in their 50s, and just incredulous. Like I cannot, for however much of the current TV show and the old HBO TV show and the current Sex and the City film, Sarah Jessica Parker's character Carrie is this like she eschews traditional norms, right? She Jimmy eschews.
All right, moving on.
Marinated it. All of that just fucking goes out the window. So the characters wildly change as these movies keep progressing. So why watch it at that point? The essence is lost. It's just a even bigger materialistic shit show where now it's just fucking consumed by, I don't know, camels in Dubai or whatever. Gold.
Yeah, and it feels cynical. Like that's the issue I have with it. Like
bland.
I think the original Sex and the City has like lots of heart to it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it inherently watchable.
Because there's betrayal, there's intimacy, there's trust, there's materialism, sure, but there's like all this raw sentimental outrage.
There's sex and the city.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But then in the rest of the films, it's mostly just city.
Mostly just city.
Who wants just city?
You know the other thing too about this movie, Sex, that we're talking about, Sex and the City 1. There's actually not a lot of sex, which is kind of frustrating and disappointing because you're promised one thing.
That neighbor gets it.
Yeah.
Samantha's neighbor is like.
Miranda gets it too eventually when she gets back together with Steve.
Yeah, what's up?
And obviously Charlotte got it at some point because she's knocked up.
Whole baby, bro.
Yeah, whole baby. She got a whole baby knocked up in her. But like, I don't consider myself dismissive of And Just Like That, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it does kind of seem like many things that are rebooted or reimagined, I'm just kind of like, this just feels cynical. It doesn't feel like you're doing this because you have an actual story to tell.
Yeah.
Now, I don't remember what the relationship is between Sex and the City and Darren Star, who is, I think he created it, but then Michael Patrick King kind of shepherded it into... Right. And Darren Star was like the executive producer, but he went on and he made Emily in Paris.
Yeah.
Which, again, speaking of like, there are shows about fucking Lord of the Rings and dragons on, and I watched Emily in Paris in like a day. Like that show fucking rips.
Yes.
And like, but that show feels like a natural progression of the same brand, no matter what you think of that show, which is objectively an obscenely ridiculous show.
Yeah.
But that does feel like a continuation. Whereas like, And Just Like That just kind of feels like I don't know why.
You know,
Who wants this?
why do we go into like such deep-seated discourse over Sex in the City when it's typically for a certain demographic, just like any fucking Jason Statham movie is. No one bats an eyelid when these 3-hour pieces of shit come out and it's just action after action. So it's a certain kind of genre where it's like everybody just goes ham and watches it and forgets about it. But Sex in the City, people watch it and just start crying because they're so enraged for some reason.
So a good example, speaking of Statham, is like Fast and the Furious, that series. Like most of those movies are awful.
Yes.
And I know, I hear it already. People are like, well, some movies are just allowed to be enjoyed as popcorn movies and stuff. And it's kind of like, yeah, I get you have terrible taste and that's fine. But like those movies are really not good. But when like, did Fast 10 come out already or is it coming out? I don't even know. But when those movies get announced, you just kind of feel like it's like, yeah, I mean, 10 is after 9, you know? And like, it just feels very inevitable. Whereas
Fast
like
X.
And that's like that's kind of how a lot of cultural things happen now. Where even we talked about Constantine last time, and they're trying to make a Constantine 2 because they're just kind of like mining all of these like nostalgia things. And then but then when you go back and you watch something like Sex and the City, you're like, well, they're never gonna recapture this.
No.
And they don't in this movie, and they don't in 2, and they obviously haven't in Just Like That. And it's like, you know what did I thought a good job of being both a good movie and sort of recapturing something you could never recapture was The Many Saints of Newark. Speaking of HBO.
Oh yeah, because it stayed true to the time. Kind
of like I really like that movie. I think it stands alone as a very good crime film.
Yeah.
I don't think, but The Sopranos is, I mean, it's the greatest piece of television art ever created.
I agree. Yep.
Big words, John. and you just have to, for me, who's like, it is the most important piece of work in my life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't expect The Many Saints of Newark to be that important.
Totally.
You know,
and even then, it is such incredible impact. Yeah,
and if you're okay with that, that's fine. But some of these things that they're like not even trying. They don't even really seem to care.
Because they leap out of time by the time they become movies.
Yeah.
And that's where they fail. It's like if we had Seinfeld 2023, it will be fucking infuriating. I don't want to hear Jerry talking about, like, complaining about, what's this NFT about? What's the deal? I don't. It's just going to be just corny and dumb, and we're just not going to be able to relate to it.
Yeah. I think that like something I said this on a different episode. I don't remember which one, but like the idea that as in like kind of cinematic culture, we're just like everything drips with like nostalgia and we're just drowning in it. And it but none of it feels actually very nostalgic. It just feels like there is a thing I recognize on screen.
Yeah.
Like the Star Wars movies, I think, were kind of the beginning of this, like The Force Awakens and stuff, where you're just kind of like, as a fan, I recognize that thing, but you're just kind of like, I don't know if I really give a fuck.
No,
you know?
Exactly.
Yeah, and as streaming has taken over and people are like, so Sex and the City 3 as a film was going to come out. Like that was a thing that was planned. But streaming has taken over in such a way where like someone did the math where they're just like, well, if you make 8 hours, people will watch more. And some executive is like, oh, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. So so you're saying 2 is less than 8? And they're like, yeah. So they'll watch more. And it's like, that has become like, everything is like, well, I have this great film idea, and hopefully I can stretch it out so thin to an 8-hour experience.
Man,
it just doesn't work a lot.
Yeah,
that's all I'm kind of getting at, and a lot of that has to do with like
shitty networks taking it on.
But hopefully, like the goodwill people have towards this like nostalgic thing, will carry this piece of shit fucking show.
Carry.
Yeah. funny.
Sorry.
But like carry this into being like people go, oh, that wasn't that bad. That wasn't a bad way to spend 8 hours. And it's like, well, actually, there are probably better ways to spend 8 hours. I don't know. I'm being a fucking elitist. Sorry, guys.
No, it also depends on if like now that they're doing a 10-year for Harry Potter season by season. So for the next 10 years, we're gonna have that content.
And they're just retelling the books, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need that.
I don't need it
And
anymore.
I get it. Like, J.K. Rowling, she wants to hate on trans people and stay relevant, and then also make $100 million extra.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that if and when that ever comes out, it's going to be totally chill and cool around the world about it. But like,
you know, it's HBO, so
yeah,
I'm about that life.
But like the discourse around Harry Potter is like really, really
timeless.
No, it's brutal. It's like brutal because of J.K. Rowling has made such herself such a fucking toxic person.
Yeah.
And like such a radioactive asset to be attached to. Like she just has. She's just a piece of shit.
And yet all the money, just making bank.
She's still making that bank
until she dies to death.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. I really liked the show, and this movie just was a bad version of the show. Yeah.
Totally. For all the OG fans of the show, I feel like they would feel exactly the same way. Which is why it has kind of an abysmal score on Rotten Tomatoes. Not because the show was bad, but because the movie didn't hold up.
Yeah, and also like a lot of people had to just watch the movie for the first time without experiencing the previous shit. Anyway, like I don't know what I'm trying to articulate with this stuff, but like let's just suffice to say that Sex and the City has kind of fallen victim to the current, like the newer aspects of Sex and the City have kind of retroactively ruined previous iterations of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's unfair because the show is really good.
How do you
go on.
How do you determine the value of like a piece of thing that you've watched, whether it's a TV show or a movie? I know you talk about like rewatchability is one of the things. Is that the only factor? Like what makes it good even when it's weak?
Like me personally?
Yeah, like this whole podcast, we're talking about movies that are mediocre, but we love. What is the thing that keeps us bringing back to some of these films? Why are we talking for 2 hours about Sex and the City?
I think like mediocrity is kind of like a pithy buzz term for what we're talking about. Like I like that we say that. I like that we use that term, but like the movie has to, like there's so many movies that just like they live in that time and they kind of become meaningless out of context. Other movies like these ones, you can kind of, there's something there. Like there's something more to it that you can look back on and kind of feel differently about it. And like I said, I think a couple episodes ago, I mentioned that one of those movies is Broken City, which Broken City has just a storyline that just would not fly today. Not because it's like a terrible, it's not like a bad storyline, and it's not just about an evil guy doing good and kind of getting away with it. It's not a great story, but it's just culturally, I don't think it would be something that people would go for. And I find that stuff really interesting, even if the movie's not very good. I find all that stuff really interesting. We were looking at it earlier when we were watching fucking Chasing Amy, where like they're using like the F slur, and the storyline itself is just so kind of
nothing.
It just is so kind of out of time in a way where it's like about a straight man trying to
bed a lesbian
trying
woman.
to bed a gay woman, and you're just like, wow. To look back on that is really interesting. If you are okay with kind of tolerating that stuff, I find it personally really interesting, which is why I do this show.
Like ultimately, we do come back because of whatever stayed with us, right? There is that degree of staying power with every single movie that we associate it with.
Yeah.
So even if it's 29% on Rotten Tomatoes, why do certain things become cult favorites? Is because something of that stayed with you and motivated you enough to come back to it after a certain time has passed. So
yeah, and
that's the way I feel about like Sex and the City right now. It's like, even though I have a completely different experience with the TV show, more powerful, right? It's better, it's more engaging. that is enough to drive me to this film and more. So now I've seen the second part and the whatever subsequent TV shows. I know they're all fucking hot garbage.
Yeah.
But this movie, the first movie, warrants enough staying power for me to have to come back and be like, all right, you know what? I would have watched it for 2 hours.
It warrants enough because the show was so good.
Hell yeah.
And this is just this weird meteorite that's broken off of the main meteor of this show that you're just kind of like, in context of the show and this film is really interesting. Sex and the City 2 just feels totally different.
Yeah.
It feels like these 4 characters were implanted upon a goofy premise that someone came up with.
Yeah.
And that makes it not very good. This at least feels like the show, you know? And yeah, I don't know. There's lots of reasons to come back to these movies. I just find them really interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think it's fascinating that why we choose some things to talk about when like one of us feels so deeply about it and the other one is like, what was this dog shit? You know what I mean? Like there, but then I see some of the things that are like, oh, I see why it's still like talked about, why it's still in like public discourse or like pop culture today.
But it's funny because like Red Sparrow is not. Like that is a movie that not many people, unless they listen to this podcast and go watch that movie or watch that movie and listen to this podcast or just happen to stumble across it because they like Jennifer Lawrence. Like that is a movie that probably won't be like, just like fucking Broken City. Like that's a movie that not a lot of people are sitting around, much like fucking Dreamgirls, which doesn't actually exist and you could never find ever. I challenge you to actually find it. People aren't going to, I don't know. It's fun to delve into why they may have been dismissed by culture, you know.
It's fun to like dissect your brain and be like, why are you still in here in my head?
Yeah.
What is it about this thing that stays in my mind?
It's also like, it's like a really good example, which is like coming into the discourse like in the last decade or so, which is very much like what we're talking about. So the movie, Michael Mann's Miami Vice, that movie, when it came out, the film establishment, the critical establishment was kind of like, okay, like this is an overlong, insane, kind of boring, weird movie that you can't actually hear what anyone is saying in it, starring 2 massive stars who don't seem like they want to be in it.
Yeah.
And then years later, as you watch and rewatch Miami Vice, there's like young filmmakers who are like, that was a huge deal to me when I was young.
Right.
And a lot of it has to do with something like have you seen Miami Vice?
No.
Oh,
Is it cinematography and things like that?
Well, Michael Mann is like a master for one.
Yeah.
But also like at the time when it comes out, so we would have been 15, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch a movie that like shot with these guys walking through a club set to Linkin Park's Numb, and you're just kind of like, that scene like is moving. That scene is like it really moves me in a way.
I'm already sold.
Yeah, and it's not about the movie being like, is this a great piece of cinema? Is this as good as The Godfather or not? It's like that actually doesn't matter.
No.
And that's what's interesting about it.
Yeah, hell
is
yeah.
like, and it's the same with like Neon Demon, our beloved Neon Demon is like, yeah, not everyone will like this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, but that's actually not relevant to this conversation.
No.
It's the same with this movie. And one of the injustices of this movie is like, well, yeah, not everyone will like it because maybe they've dismissed the show and they didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Then you see this and you're just like, yeah, this show is exactly what I thought it was. And you're like, actually, it's not. The show is really good. This movie is not.
Yeah. If everybody liked 100% of every film, then it would just be, to me, like a mediocre film.
And going back to me, the essence of mediocrity is going back to something like Fast 10 is something that just feels like by the numbers, inevitable. Yeah, that's just what happens. When you make Fast 9, Fast 10's got to come out. Mm-hmm. That is the most boring shit in the world. Like that to me is like just kind of like, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
Like I at least some of these movies, Constantine is a good example. At least they're trying something. They're brave enough to like try bravery, whatever. Like it's just fucking movies, but like they're like brave enough to try something a little different, you know. And it's better to do that and maybe not be perfect, than it is to just be like, Fast 9 was just like this, so Fast 10 will be mostly
faster.
like that, but a little faster
Little
and more
more
furious.
fast.
which is the joke behind the fucking, like, even when you look at
Yeah.
Fast and the Furious is just Point Break with cars.
Right.
And
Right.
that's totally great. Like, Fast and the Furious 1 is great.
Yeah.
I like that movie.
You know what?
It's-
I would never know.
You've never seen it?
Not a single one. Because
Yeah.
I'm a plebeian. I have no culture.
They're not. When I was on vacation a couple of years ago, I was there. We were just like bored and watching TV, and I was trying to find an English channel, and the only English channel was showing. We were in Italy, and it was showing Fast 5, and I watched like 10 minutes of Fast 5, and I thought I was like gonna have an aneurysm. I thought it was one of the most brain dead pieces of garbage I'd ever seen, and that is actually. That kind of shit is more boring to me than a movie that's like, oh, it's like trying to do a thing.
Yeah.
And even if it's failing, it's like trying to do a thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Thank you. Because that is what I feel like Sex and the City is. Because there is not going to be a podcast dedicated to a car chase action scene that spans
And
10 films.
This movie is incredibly unconventional because of that. Because it's trying to both grab the audience of the show and
do something
grab
different.
a couple other people. It's very unconventional.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are we in love with Sex and the City again?
I'm still in love with the show. I do think the show is
yeah.
great. And do you have a top 5?
Goddamn right I have a top 5. Now that we've had some highbrow conversation, time to bring you back down to earth. Top 5 alternate names of the Sex and the City books, movie, whatever, if they were written by other cast members instead of Carrie. And now this is going to be a quiz / top 5, okay? I'm going to tell you what the name is. You got to tell me what character I'm thinking of. Okay, let's start easy. This is a instead of a book, there's going to be a podcast, and the sound is going to be bow chicka wow wow penis.
Samantha.
Yeah. All right, this
We're gonna loop that as our new intro to this show. Just that.
just
Yeah.
for every episode from going forward.
From now on, yeah.
Wow, chicka, wow, wow, penis. Number 4, I hate everything.com.
Miranda.
Just you had me at hate. It was right there. And now this is gonna get tricky, so I'll give you 2 options. Okay, number 3, loading the dishwasher like you would your wife. Or prudes are people too.
Charlotte?
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
because of the dishwasher. Because she likes things clean.
she was
No,
loading up her wife.
because she preggers.
Okay, cool.
Because she got the plates in her bun. I don't know. What's the analogy here? Oven in her washer.
Yeah.
Right? That's the one.
She put a bun in her washing machine. Yeah. It's all
Soapiest baby
soggy
ever.
and wet and just dissolved.
This can't just,
Yeah.
oh God. Good. Look at you. 3 for 3. All right.
There's only 3 characters.
Oh, but there's more characters.
Oh.
Number 2, dead eyes in the city. An ethnographic account of cemeteries.
Big?
Yes!
Why?
Because he's just not even present, my dude. He's just like not in every scene. He's just looking elsewhere. His eyes are in the stratosphere. Chris Noth is just fucking,
I also get the impression that, and I've heard some things, like offhand things about Chris Noth. First off, like he was accused of being kind of a jerk
Totally.
on set and stuff.
Yeah.
I also think that he just seems like a guy who doesn't like acting. Like
God, no.
he kind of like fell into it, but like
He liked the money.
every show he kind of plays the same character, and he doesn't seem to want to try very hard.
No.
You know, Good Wife, which I love, he was the same. Like Law and Order, yeah.
He's just big or medium.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
never goes large, that
Yeah.
guy. All right, and number 1, From Court to Court with Miranda, a sports memoir.
Gave it away with your sick accent.
Get it? Because court to court, because he's always holding a basketball. And his wife is a lawyer. That's right. It's fucking 2 for 2. And that's our top 5 for today.
Wow.
Yeah.
We really nailed it.
Wow, chicka, wow, wow.
Penis. We wrap this bad boy up.
God. I love you all. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
It's been
this
the
guy-
low ceiling.
Yeah, this has been the low ceiling. Did we not say that before?
I don't know.
Probably not. Who
But-
gives a fuck anymore?
But I am Pre.
And I'm John. And
Not John Big. Wait.
John Preston.
John
Big.
John Preston Big.
And just like one more thing before we go. Miranda?